Thank you for tuning in to watch our Invest Minneapolis-St. Paul Leadership Summit. You're about to watch panel number 2, Policy or Politics? What is holding back equitable economic progress in the Twin Cities, and what is being done about it? Don't forget to like and subscribe to watch more videos like these. Enjoy.
All right. Thanks for having us. Excited for this panel. I actually have a little connection to about 2/3 of it. And I'm a Woodburyite. And if you could take the blockage on Dale Street, that'd be great. And Adam, I've had Adam speak to all of our partners about just revitalizing downtown. We're in the Dayton's building with 800 people. So I'm, as mentioned, office managing partner of EY. So we have about 800 and about 70% in their 20s and running up to 60. So, and then now we have a connection. So now we're 3 for 3. So I'm really excited for this panel. I think we all appreciate economic equity and growth across the U.S. is tough, right? It's challenging. It's super important. And the Twin Cities is certainly no exception. And this panel entitled, as you heard, Policy and Politics, What is Holding Back Equitable Economic Progress in the Twin Cities and What is Being Done About It, more importantly. Our panelists they'll discuss their unique perspectives, and they each have really unique perspectives on how to support the region's underserved neighborhoods and what are the underlying challenges. And as I mentioned, what are we doing about it? What are we doing to keep the current momentum and then the future momentum that we have? So I'm going to start with a question for all of you. The first question is, what promising policies have been passed in recent years to drive equitable economic progress in the Twin Cities? And how do we move from rhetoric to resource allocation? So whoever wants to jump in, otherwise we can move down the line.
I'll jump in. I'll just start first. I would just like to take a moment, though, and to introduce myself and a little bit about Woodbury. So my name is Anne Burt. I've been mayor. I'm in my second term in Woodbury. Woodbury is a suburban community. Many of you have heard of it. You live there. Thank you for living there. But a lot of the cities and the west side of the metro doesn't know that much about Woodbury. We are now the 7th largest city in the state, the 5th largest in the metro area, and we still have room to grow, as you know, in all that construction. But we do feel like we're a vital part of the entire metro community. But in terms of some ideas or some things that are happening, one is we have been strong advocates for a long time of the work that the Met Council requires all cities in the area to do, and that is to create the comprehensive plans. So the blueprint of what happens in our community and connected, because we all have to connect to what the other comprehensive plans are doing, is we've got to plan out 20 years into the future. We look at land use and how we're going to grow and develop and what that means. So that is a vital part. And that's been one of the keys to success in Woodbury, is having planned strategic growth that's been very well thought out. One other area I just want to talk about that's been interesting is that many of you might be aware of the fiscal disparities program that exists here in the state of Minnesota. Fiscal disparities started by the legislature in 1975, and the idea was to take those communities that have strong commercial growth or opportunities or highway access or what have you, and share through taxes and redistribute some of those dollars to other communities. It's a great idea. It's the challenges. Is anyone here from the state? Do we have any legislators in the room? One of the challenges that it's a very misunderstood or not understood program. And since it started in 1975, it probably needs a relook and to make sure that the design and the implementation is working correctly. So that would be an opportunity to improve.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dominic. I'm the president and CEO of the Minneapolis Downtown Council and Downtown Improvement District. It's great to be here. Thanks a lot for the Capital Analytics for putting this event on. Our team here is up in the front. They're the kids that sit closest to the stage, which is great. Good to see you. So I just want to answer this question a couple different ways. I want to focus first on transit access and transit investments, kind of building a little bit off of what Mayor started to allude to, and then talk about housing. So the Downtown Council has a history of being strong leaders in the downtown business community, of cementing Minneapolis as the center of our transit system. Now, our transit system looks a lot different today than it did maybe in 2019, but it still is a huge asset in terms of access to jobs and making sure that, you know, as we think about today's big announcement, the state, the Minnesota Business Partnership, inviting Fortune 500 companies from around the country to talk about us being a destination, a state where we have homegrown companies and Fortune 500 companies. That doesn't happen without those investments. And so the leadership role we've played is I think, a key point to talk a little bit about both making headway with the disparities as well as just having access to jobs, access to opportunity in a meaningful way. And that's just going to continue as both the light rail lines open up, future arterial BRT lines bring more people downtown. Secondly, on housing, so the Downtown Council also has a history of not just advocating for our businesses, but for people living downtown. And if you know anything about the history of our planning, the 2025 plan said, well, today we have 35,000 residents. How can we double that number? How can we aim for 70? We didn't quite get there, but last year we eclipsed 60,000 residents in the downtown area, which is a huge benefit long term. It changes the fabric of the community. And it's something we're going to continue to lean into when we think about the next 10-year plan, the 2035 plan, where we said, now how do we get to 100,000? And the long-term growth of the region depends on cities like Minneapolis taking a lot of that growth, and the Metropolitan Council works with us on that as well. So forecasting where the next 80,000 people come in the city of Minneapolis, we hope half of them come downtown. And just this morning, I was talking with our executive committee about the downtown core and how we're looking at the downtown improvement district adding residential service. Within that downtown core, that 10 by 12 block downtown, we have 600 new units that have been built since 2013, since the DID's inception. Almost all of them have been in the last 10 years. And so that explosion of growth is now we're at a point where it's kind of eclipsed, and we have to wait for the market to catch up, wait for other conditions. We have to think about the public policy ramifications of debates like rent control and other things, investments in housing that can help spur growth. So it's not just dependent on public sector investments, but also what are the things we're doing on the private side, equity-wise and capital markets-wise, to keep these projects in the pipeline. That's the next important challenge for us to meet. But both housing and transit, I think we have an important story to tell for access to opportunity and making this a city that long-term affordability is really going to be a huge growth opportunity for us when you think about the West Coast, the East Coast, and other markets that we're in competition with.
Hear me now? Oh, I am loud. So my name is Terrance Hopson, and I serve as our Regional Vice President, Western Governors University. A little bit about myself. I've dedicated my entire professional career to higher education. It was also my mother who instilled scholarship in me as well. I grew up right in St. Paul on Selby Avenue, not the new Selby, the old Selby. So those of you who know the old Selby know, right? So a couple of things I want to talk about. I echo all of the sentiments of my colleagues. I think that we can point to a lot of great things that have been done. I think we can look at Elevate Hennepin. I think that one of the things I really want to dive into is the guaranteed basic income for individuals in Minneapolis. And the reason why I want to touch on this is because we know that this is not something that is the first of its kind. I think in California, they're doing a lot of great work around this. And though this was a pilot and since ended, I think that we had a lot of data to really help us look at ways in which we can help individuals towards a more prosperous future, right? Human capital is important. We have to remember that. The first panel, they talked about investing in people. And I think that that is something that we have to do. So when individuals are worried about putting food on their table or worried about medication, they're not thinking about all of the other things. Hopefully we'll dive a little bit into the housing piece later on. So how do we move from this rhetoric piece to resource allocation? I think the Twin Cities has done a great job at that. There was a pilot program that has since ended. I'm sure most of you all know that. How do we work with elected officials to make this something permanent? We know we're not going to get any money from the federal government for this, but how do we galvanize the movement collectively, not only with employers, but community-based organizations as well, to ensure that everyone is on the path towards a prosperous future, not only in the Twin Cities, but across the state of Minnesota as well.
That's great. If I could comment, the shoe game is solid this morning. I'm a sneakerhead, but I feel lame in these things. I was actually at that Minnesota Business Partnership, and really well attended. A lot of excitement in the building at Medtronic this morning. So, solid. This is another one for all. So equity can mean different things depending on who you ask. Access to capital, housing, education, work opportunities. Oftentimes it's some combination thereof. And how should the region prioritize these challenges? And what does that mean for you as a leader? Again, for everyone.
We'll start this way. All right. This is a really good question. I think that we have to prioritize all of them. We have to sequence, align, and invest strategically. I think this goes back to the first point that I made. If individuals are food insecure or home insecure, they are not worried about going to school. They're not thinking about workforce development. They are thinking about survival at the end of the day. So capital and housing is something that we need to absolutely prioritize. Once we prioritize capital and housing and individuals have access to that, we can then start looking at other areas in which we can help individuals move towards a more prosperous place in their life. Hopefully, we move them from sustainability to actually having a thriving life at the end of the day. And I think that that is the American dream. I think that every single individual, regardless of your zip code, should have the opportunity to wake up and not worry about food, not worry about medication, not worrying about, do I have childcare? All of the things that distract us in life, right? Like no one should have to worry about that. And I think that the Twin Cities is an area that has so many resources. And collectively, when we work together, again, we can really move the needle to ensure that we have these equitable outcomes for individuals.
And I'll try to keep it to, I think, two subjects here, picking up on the thread that you just mentioned. Homelessness response is something the Downtown Council also takes very seriously, both us as an organization and our advocacy, as well as the DID providing resources to our community. And we've been at the forefront of that kind of work. And I think that that's feels like at times a crisis for us. So how do we respond to that? And related to it is what we call foundational safety. If you do not feel safe in a downtown, you're not going to spend time here. You're not going to come to an event. You're not going to come to the office. So how do we get that right? And trying to lead our community through a really charged debate about investments in police and policing, and where does the community fit into that? And we feel that we have a really important role to play because the business leaders have been leaders on this issue. We also have a bunch of nonprofit members. We're not just a business association like a chamber. Since we're so place-based and focused on downtown, we build really strong connections in the community broader than just the business community. So how do we push forward that debate in a time where, the mayor might think one thing, the city council might think another, and we have to bridge some really difficult challenges. But I'm excited at the opportunity. I do think the further we get along in, past some of the tragedies that the city has confronted and worked through, the more opportunity there is. There is at times a renewed, interest and spirit and approach to this debate. And I'd urge everybody to try to be a part of that in the way that they can as well. Foundational safety is so important. It's just something that both from an operational standpoint and feeling like you can be down here. And I think I hope everybody in this room feels safer today than they did a year ago or 3 years ago. And then we talk about it and we spread that word, because the one thing you can't do is say it's safe downtown. It's safe downtown, because you're reminding people that, maybe it wasn't, or maybe it's not safe. It's coming down here and having that experience for yourself, and then sharing it with your friend network, because there's a lot of people who haven't been downtown in 5 or 6 years, and they don't really understand that we have turned the corner. It's become such a polarizing hotspot.
They're all going to Woodbury.
Could be true.
Yeah, but we have housing choices down here. So move back into downtown.
Allow me to tell you about housing choices. That is one thing that is not well understood about Woodbury. It's thought to, everyone thinks it's just a community of a bunch of single family homes, and it's not. Again, back to that purposeful growth and planning. Woodbury is a community that has prided itself in having about 50% single family homes and 50% multifamily homes, whether that's apartments or townhouses or duplexes. In fact, we also have a lot of affordable housing. We have 2 affordable housing projects occurring right now. You already have one built by you on the south side of town, but in the northeast corner where we've got a lot of growth in industry, we've got 500 units coming into our community that are under construction, which is great. So that just ties to that point of equity and making sure that we've got housing choice for people. And then, again, Woodbury's prided itself on that. In addition, touch on another topic that was brought up before is transportation and transit. and how important that is. Woodbury is now home to the terminus of the Gold Line, which is a bus rapid transit program, which connects the East Metro into downtown St. Paul, which will then further connect to Minneapolis. So that has been a tremendous add. Of course, it's new. And we get a lot of people in the suburbs who get a little leery and worry about transit. But the message that I've been trying to deliver for a long time is we're not building transit for today or the next 5 years. It's really the next several decades and even the next century. So creating that pipeline to allow to further enhance economic development and growth in our community, I think is vital.
And of course, I'm kidding about the Woodbury, but Adam, I mean, so you're running an office of 800 people. I ask what's the most important thing to them, and it's feeling that foundational safety. I mean, if everyone has to thrive for all of us to feel safe. So, yeah, very, very on point. This is another question for all of you. What examples would you highlight of private companies or nonprofit institutions stepping in where public policy has stalled? And how do these efforts scale or integrate with broader economic strategies?
Do you want to start with that since it's your turn to start first?
Sure, I get the easy one. I think there's a lot of opportunities. I'll give one that's a little self-serving because it's us, but our organization is a nonprofit. It's a 501c6, but the Downtown Improvement District has stepped in kind of a lot of big ways, from providing a storage facility for people who are unhoused. It started as a pilot program. It's grown into a big service now that a lot of people rely on. Opening a community space on Nicollet Mall, at Gaviday, which is a huge resource for our community, to some of the safety work that we've done, which continues to grow and evolve and attract more funding. And we pilot things that will become part of our ongoing operational budget. So the Downtown Improvement District has led in a big way. I guess if I have to try to recognize another set of companies, I'd just say lift up the sports teams for a moment. They are big leaders in our community on a lot of big initiatives, both from how they financially support them, how they show up. The Vikings, the Twins, the Timberwolves, Timberwolves and Lynx together, all enormously important assets to our community, and in a big way. In fact, they're so popular, they get hit up by everybody to sponsor this and support that. That can be a challenging position to navigate for them, but they're great corporate partners, as well as just, the important cultural element of our city as well. That's something we shouldn't take for granted. I like to remind people that about 10 years ago, there was a big debate about where the US Bank Stadium was going to be. And it wasn't a given that it was going to be downtown. And we're about to embark on another conversation about where the next Target Center goes. And downtown has to be top of mind. And there's an important reason for it, from access to parking to all the amenities that we want to lift up. But the economic development opportunities, the economic impact is so huge. A lot of the professional leagues have looked at this model where they build Foxborough way outside of Boston, or you build the 49ers stadium way outside of San Francisco and Santa Clara. And we cannot let that happen in this community. We really need the arena to be downtown. I know that it's not popular to talk about supporting sports teams because of the economics of sports, but it still has such a bigger ripple effect, and it's going to continue to keep us being a headquarters city, and a city that has a growing business population, businesses downtown, where for us, 8 of our top 15 employers are continuing to grow, and that's good. We don't want to see massive layoffs or big changes to our companies downtown. So I submit that as an idea. Probably a few others I can think of as well, but those are the ones that come to mind.
I'll just add a couple of things because I represent government, and a lot of times there's a lot of belief that government is here to solve it all, and it's clear we are not. We cannot do it ourselves, and it doesn't work. So we've got to work in an ecosystem combined with organizations like Adams, or ones that we have out in our East Metro area. So working together with community foundations that do a lot to build up and support the community. Our Chamber of Commerce is so vital. Our local food shelf. It's amazing how many people are looking for food. We've got just a tremendous community that supports all of that. We work very closely with our local schools as we talk about how important the labor force is and growing that labor force. I happen to be also the co-chair of the Regional Council of Mayors. We meet on a monthly basis and bring up important topics that we as mayors talk about that impact the region. And one of the topics that we'll be addressing on Monday is, how are we educating our high schoolers these days? And are we preparing them for the future of AI and what's going to happen and what's needed in our labor force going forward? We're also challenged with people that are retiring, and all the baby boomers are going to be gone. There's a lot of opportunity as those people, I know handfuls of them right now that are retiring, opportunities for young people to come in and move into those roles. So we've got a lot of opportunity going forward in our region, and I'm really excited about it. But it does take working together with all those nonprofits, education, government, businesses together.
Well, first of all, go Vikings. I'm sure Kirk Cousins is probably wishing he stayed in Minnesota, I would assume. I think there's a lot of examples that we can point to in the Twin Cities with large organizations stepping up, U.S. Bank, Target, for example, the work that they're doing around DEI. But I really want to look at and talk about North Minneapolis and South Minneapolis. And our colleagues on the first panel kind of alluded to a little bit of this. I think they read my notes. But I want to talk about the Northside Founders Group and then also Northside Forward. And the work that Neon is doing as well. They're really pumping a lot of money into that area. We know that that's an area that has seen huge disinvestments over the years. So it's great that we now have nonprofit organizations doing the good work of the people. That is absolutely critical. And then I can't forget about Sabathani. Many of you all may know Sabathani. They're in South Minneapolis long before the murder of George Floyd. They've been a staple in that community over there. They're doing a lot of work around workforce development, housing, education. You go into that neighborhood and they have literally done so much amazing, amazing work. And again, this is what happens when you are truly galvanizing a movement. You're doing the grassroots work in order to get to the root cause of the problem. And who knows best than the people who live in the community every single day. So that's what we have to anchor in, and that's what we have to remember. How do we continue to ensure that we're uplifting people in the actual community?
Thank you. Anne, this one's for you. As a local policymaker, where have you seen the greatest tension between political agendas and practical solutions when it comes to promoting equitable economic growth? And how do you navigate those competing forces?
Well, again, one of the things that comes to mind is just transit and how long it takes to plan for transit. The Gold Line, again, that just recently opened in March in our community that connects to St. Paul, has been in the planning works for 18 years. And it takes a lot to work through all that with various government entities, financing, and then, just the population of people that it's going to impact. So that was big. I already mentioned before the labor force shortages that we're going to be seeing and our aging population. We really just have a tight labor market right now. 3% unemployment makes for a very tight market. So we're challenged in all those areas and just trying to work with all the entities to have some solutions for it. Looking forward, just slightly concerned about the upcoming state budget shortfall that we're going to be seeing in 28-29 timeframe. We'll be $5 billion short. So much of vitalization in our economy comes from the support of what comes through the state. But that deficit and how that's going to be handled is going to be very challenging.
Adam, this one's for you. Downtown districts are often seen as anchoring economic momentum. How are you ensuring downtown development doesn't come at the cost of neighborhood equity, and what partnerships are moving the needle?
It's a great question. Waco here with Elliott Park Neighborhood Association. It's one of the many relationships we maintain as an organization with the neighborhood groups. So when you think about downtown, everyone has a slightly different definition of it. We have the downtown core, you have kind of Nicollet Mall from Washington Avenue down to 12th. That used to be about the basic footprint of downtown. Now you add in all the development that's occurred over the last 50 years up and down the riverfront, into Elliott Park, into Loring Park. We think of it as a collection of neighborhoods. But the fact is we as an association still are anchored in the core. How do we have those relationships? It's a matter of working with people. It's a matter of thinking about the resources we could bring to them. In our 2035 plan, we have a specific part calling out neighborhood cultivation. We have one of our leaders from that subcommittee in the back who's helping to implement our work plan. Just how these neighborhoods have their distinct feel and branding and that sort of thing, their local aspect of what their neighborhood brings to the broader puzzle, but how do they also fit better together as well? So it does feel like you're in North Loop, you're also downtown. You're over on the river by Wamyamni, you're also in downtown. You're across the river in St. Anthony, Maine. And so we're thinking about that in a deliberate way. We're also thinking about the future of the Downtown Improvement District and offering those ambassador resources, those safe and clean and green resources to the rest of the community. There's a state law change a couple of years ago that would allow us to do that. We used to only be hamstrung or withheld just to only servicing a commercial corridor. Now we can also service the residents. So what does that look like? How do we interact with them? We're not just going to go in and say, here, take our services. They have to, frankly, have to fund it and pay for it. And how do they work well with us as an institution? That's something that's on our mind in a big way. And then the other thing I'll try to add to this answer is to talk about our economic development program that we're standing up. And that encompasses a lot of specific work around retail, doing an inventory. There's this narrative that there is no retail downtown. There's all kinds of retail. It's just all over the place. And it's not the way we used to think about it with larger, bigger box retailers along Nicollet Mall. There's a shortage there, but there's an excess in other parts. And when you think about those collection of 5 neighborhoods, we're doing an inventory of that. We're trying to activate the storefronts. We're working on some of the biggest picture items and, frankly, a crisis of commercial real estate. What do we do with all the vacancy downtown? What's a future use that we can think about? Not only the ones that have been talked about pretty excessively, like converting to housing or other sorts of uses, but what are specific employers that might want those big spaces? And the vacancy story is its own, frankly, set of challenges. It's confined to a couple of specific buildings, but how do we tackle some of those bigger picture items as an organization in a way that connects to the neighborhoods? Because as I said earlier, we want to grow that residential population, and then we need to figure out how we fit into it as a business community.
Terrance, this is for you. Higher education is often cited as a pathway to equity. How is your institution, through education and curriculum, helping to shape civic discourse around economic equity? And what role should institutional leadership play in that conversation?
Yeah, so really good question. So at Western Governors University, there's a couple of things that we truly believe in. And as a true higher ed practitioner, one of the things that's near and dear to me is equity in both access and attainment. We can't talk about attainment if we don't talk about access. And when we talk about access, we have to look across the entire ecosystem. We have to ensure that we're searching every crevice for individuals who are looking to change their life. At WGU, we've been around almost 30 years now. And from an equity standpoint, we really disrupted how we educate individuals, right? So if you take yourself back to when you were in college, you probably remember going to school, sitting in a class, getting a grade on an A, B, C, D, F scale, right? At WGU, essentially what we've done is we've flipped that, where time is actually variable for our students. So what does that mean? It doesn't matter how long it takes an individual to complete their studies. And why is this important, especially from an equity standpoint? We know that working adults are super busy. They're dealing with life. They're trying to take care of the home. They're going to work and everything else in between. We call that thing life is lifing. Yeah, that's what happens with adults as well. So we have to ensure that we, as an institution of higher learning, we are fitting into their schedule and not the other way around. And the way in which we do that is also by ensuring that our curricula is in line with industry standards. So what does that mean from an equity standpoint? And with employer partners across the continuum to ensure that when a student graduates from WGU, they have a credential of economic value. And essentially what that means is they can then go and use that degree to actually go get a job right now, right away. One of the things I always like to say is in education, I feel like we are in the business of trying to break cycles of poverty sometimes. We have to stop these old tactics of bringing students into our systems and them not graduating. It is incumbent on us as higher ed institutions to ensure that we are putting a plethora of wraparound support services around our students so they can be successful at the end of the day.
All right, we have a couple minutes left, so we'll just keep this final response brief as we look to the future. So and it's for everyone, as the region faces growing economic disparities, how can public and private leaders find alignment on what progress looks like, especially in the face of increasing political polarization and activist pressure?
I'd say follow our North Star, which is something the Downtown Council I'm particularly proud that we have done. Know what your values are, who you're working on behalf of, what matters the most to us. I look around this room, I see 5 or 6 board members from the Downtown Council in this room. It's amazing what kind of asset we have as a downtown business community. Continue to show up, continue to get engaged, continue to be a loud advocate and voice. in the different opportunities. There's a number of ways to do that in this community where we have, frankly, I think at times a glutton of riches, a wealth of riches, which is good. But then tap into that, get engaged, and keep true to your leadership as a business community and as a loud voice on behalf of your companies.
I'll just also add that I think it's important too to look at this as a region and to work this collectively as as a group because there are so many benefits and things that are happening here in the region that need continued work and reinforcement and working together. And I know some of the work that I'm doing is looking at doing that as I work with other mayors from other cities as we coordinate working efforts and work with our legislators and work with our federal delegation on bringing monies and resources to our community.
Yeah, I echo everything my colleague said. The only thing that I'll add is equity is not a political liability. And that is so important for us to remember. And as leaders, when we work together and we get to the root cause of what is impacting and affecting our communities and areas, then we can be that much more better. And we also have to realize that, we can't always go to government for money every 5 minutes. We have to work together collectively, locally, in order to move the needle forward.
Excellent. I'd like to just thank this panel. Exceptional insights. Thank you very much. Round of applause, please. Thanks, Sarah.